Okay, so we have a 2009 Pontiac Torrent with 191,500 kilometers on, and the complaint is rough running and a bit of an idle slump on a cold start. It's been sitting for approximately 25-30 hours now, and it's about -2 Celsius outside, which is about 29 Fahrenheit, 30 Fahrenheit. Well, it says right in the instrumentation there, -3 Celsius. So I've ID'd the vehicle. We're going to go in and look at data parameters on a cold start because I don't want to start it. I want to look at data, and I'm going to choose misfire data because it's going to contain engine misfire, and I want to see if there's any cylinders misfiring. And we're going to have a look here. Well, here's something I noticed right off the bat. Intake air temperature is -1. Coolant temperature is +9. That doesn't make sense. It's toggling between 8 and 9 Celsius. So I think before I even start this thing, I'm going to have a look at the coolant temp sensor plug. So I'm out under the hood here watching the coolant temp sensor reading, and it's toggling between 8 and 9 Celsius. That is the coolant temp sensor down there. So I'm going to wiggle or manipulate the connector on it just to see if the reading changes on the scan tool. No change in the reading, but definitely I don't think it's reading correctly. Of course, if I unplug it, which I'm trying to do with one hand, which is difficult, it's going to go to -40. That doesn't look that old, that sensor. Kind of looks like it might have been replaced. But that is the coolant temp sensor. At least it's a little bit more easy to get to than the old 3.1s and 3.4s were. I'm going to plug in another temp sensor and see how it starts. With the temp sensor unplugged, it goes to -40, as you can see here. So I'm going to cool off this new temp sensor that I have here to approximately the same temperature as it is outside, and I'm going to plug it in. So here's what I did. I put a block of ice on the exhaust manifold there, as you can see, with the coolant temp sensor sitting on it. And interestingly enough, even with the key off for at least 45 minutes now, we still got a live active data. And it says that the air temperature now is -5 and coolant temperature is around 0. So we're going to start it up and see how it runs. Well, that's impressive. I guess having the scan tool plugged in kept the network alive, so it's run the battery down now, so I'm going to have to boost it. So unfortunately I had to put a booster on the vehicle to start it because I had left it sitting for about 45 minutes with the scanner hooked up, and for some reason that kept the network awake, and the battery was flat when I went to start it. So I have now driven it into the shop. I have a trickle charger on the battery, and I replugged in the factory or the original temp sensor, and it's showing roughly 24-25 Celsius. So I'm going to install the new temp sensor and see what it reads. So there's the new coolant temp sensor installed. All I did was relieve the pressure on the cooling system and quickly swap it out, and it's reading 22 Celsius. I think the other one was 25, if I recall. And it's still acclimating to the engine block. So it's probably going to drop down another degree, maybe 21. So we're going to have to park this thing outside and try again tomorrow night or tomorrow morning, one or the other. So here we are back on this Torrent, and as you can see, the ambient temperature outside is 0 Celsius right now. Last night I changed the coolant temp sensor, and I haven't started the vehicle yet. Intake air temperature is +1, coolant temperature +9. Now that to me is not right. I'm going to have a look at the actual temperature with a infrared thermometer. So I'm looking at the temperature of this engine with the infrared thermometer here. and it's showing, you know, -3. It's been sitting here since last night, -2, -3. Yet the coolant temperature reading, I'm trying to point it right at the coolant temp sensor right now. It's -1. So I don't know why that temperature sensor is reading 9 Celsius and whether that's actually a cause for a problem or not. I'm going to start this vehicle and see how it runs. So we're going to record a starting event here. Seems to start pretty darn good. Watch the coolant temperature reading. Still at, it's already beginning to rise. There is a noise in this engine if you listen carefully. Bit of a piston slap, it sounds like. You can hear that piston knock, but I don't think it's going to respond to that piston knock and do anything with it. Recording engine data, you can see the coolant temperature is rising pretty quickly. 17, 18 Celsius. I don't feel any misfires. I don't know why that temperature reading was slightly off from the actual temperature and whether or not that's bad enough to cause an issue.